Ellen. Welcome
Hi.
to our Lunchtime Listen podcast today. This is a 30-minute kind of informal chat that we often invite experts along to have a chat with, and this time we've invited one of our own experts from Enquire to have a chat with me today about meetings and all about preparing for them and getting ready for them and things. But do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ellen. I'm an information and advice officer at Enquire, and I work on the Enquire helpline, kind of answering questions that parents and carers have, and professionals and young people themselves. And do you want to introduce yourself, Mark?
Sure, it makes sense. So, hi, I'm Mark, which is weird because you already know me, but others don't. So, I'm Mark. I have worked with Enquire for 6 years now, I think. Just it's recently been my anniversary. Got into, I've got a legal background. I studied law, but was really interested in working within education. I used to be a mentor, a part of a mentoring charity in some schools in Scotland. And I've got a family member that's got some additional support needs who I'm kind of involved with supporting with meetings and things like that. So it's kind of personal, but it's also something I really care about and I'm really love getting to work in. So
Great.
Yeah, a bit about me, but less about us, and today it's all about meetings. So we wanted to organise this because at Enquire we obviously have a big focus on understanding rights to additional support for learning and children's rights to get help at school, but a really important part in realising those rights is building positive relationships with the professionals in the schools that are working together with your child. So we know that runs across everything we do and is a super important part of bringing about changes and getting your child the help they need. So we know it's a big issue that comes up on a helpline, which obviously we both have time on. So I suppose what's a good place to start? Maybe what do we actually mean about meetings? What meetings?
Because I think there's lots of different reasons you can maybe have a meeting with your school, and there's lots of different names for different types of meetings. Sometimes there can be maybe a bit too much jargon, but there can be lots of different kinds of meetings: child planning meetings, support review meetings, team around the child meetings, lots of different kinds. But in terms of what the meeting's there for, I guess it's a chance for you and the professionals who are working with your child, so the school or maybe some other people as well, to come together and kind of talk about the support your child's getting. So some meetings will maybe be your child's already getting support at school, and you might meet like every term or something like that to kind of review the support they're getting, talk about what kind of support is working well for them, does any support need to change or anything need reviewed. Sometimes reviewing documents your child might have, like support plans. Other times meetings might be more focused on there's maybe a problem with your child's school, or you're concerned about your child or about their education. So you might ask for a meeting with the school to kind of talk about that and to find some solutions. Other times there'll be meetings where there'll be lots of professionals involved. Maybe there's different people who are helping your child. Maybe they're getting some support from health professionals or educational psychologists or people like that. So sometimes the purpose of a meeting can be for all of those different people to kind of come together and talk and plan together how they're going to support your child. So meetings can kind of happen for different reasons and have different purposes and have lots of different names. So don't worry about that. But I guess the point is just for everyone to have a chance to speak, to share their views, to listen to each other's views, and to try and get some solutions in place if there's a problem.
Yeah, totally agree with the different names of it as well, because we sometimes, I know I've had a call recently with a parent that was like, I need a TAC meeting. And it's like, your local authority or your school might not even have a TAC meeting. They might call it something totally different. So it's not, you don't need to worry about the name of it as much as the content of what you're chatting about, is it? Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. And in terms of parents' rights to be involved with the school and their child support, and also I guess maybe children themselves, their own rights to kind of have a say about what's happening at school. And what kind of rights do parents and children have with the school?
Yeah, they've got really clear ones to have a right to be involved. So I'll start with children. So it's a fundamental human right. It's been great recently to see Scotland bring into law the United Nations rights of the child. So children have a fundamental right to be involved in decisions affecting their lives, and education and their support at school is absolutely one of those things. So, I mean, it's common sense, obviously, to, like, if we're making decisions that are going to affect a young person's life, to involve them in it. But it's not just now good practice, it's actually a legal right to it. So it's so important that schools and parents and families and carers remember to check in with the child about, like, well, what are you feeling about this? What's going on for you? Like, what do you want to happen next? Because I think we could all be guilty of it at times, of kind of trying to jump into problem solving mode, because we all want what's best for our kids. But like, sometimes the best thing is to actually take a step back and say, well, what would be best for you? In terms of 12 to 15-year-olds, they've got some specific extra rights when it comes to support for learning. So it's a bit of a reflection in the law of them just getting a bit older by that point, and recognising that they should be able to, with support and with advocacy and with help when it's needed, but 12 to 15-year-olds should be able to kind of be more involved and have more of a say, and they at that point basically get the same rights as that their parents have, to ask for their needs to be assessed, or to ask for a review of their support and that kind of stuff. We are part of a partnership service called My Rights, My Say, that's for 12 to 15-year-olds with additional needs. And that service is really about trying to help those young folk use their rights and have the support and the advocacy to help them, like, actually ask for the help that they need, or to be more involved in decisions about their help at school. For parents and carers, their rights are also really clear. It's in the main additional support for learning law, sometimes called the ASL Act, but parents have a right to be involved in decisions about their children's support at school. It's like, parents have so much to share, like, they're going to be one of the experts on their children, and often schools might get a bit stuck, for example, where they're like, oh, well, I've had another pupil in my class and I've supported them this way, so I've tried that and it's not really worked this time, like, it's not working well. And often parents are the people that are going to have the best insights there to say, oh, well, we do this thing at home already, or when they go to that club, this is the way we help them, like, these are adjustments that work really well for my child. And it's really, like, all of our experiences, I'm sure, I was going to say, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm sure I can in this instance, like, all the cases that we hear about through people that we speak to, the times that it's working best is when school and home are working together. And on the same team, basically. So, yeah, parents, that's a long rounded way of saying that parents and children both have a clear legal right to be involved in decisions. So you can kind of take confidence from that and not feel like you're stepping on toes. It's absolutely okay to weigh in and to raise concerns and to try and be involved in figuring out the best next steps.
Great. And in terms of, like, if a parent is going into a meeting, sometimes as well, it can be really helpful for them to bring someone along with them. Well, I guess we can talk a bit more generally, I guess, about preparing for meetings.
Yeah, totally. I don't say a bit about advocacy.
Yeah, go for it.
You can talk about other ways to prepare. So, in terms of advocacy, so parents have a right to take someone into these kind of proper meetings at school to talk about children's support. That could be a partner or a family member or a neighbour or a friend, so someone that's there for a bit of moral support, maybe help to take some notes, just having someone on your team, because it can be, even as the adult in the room, it can be intimidating, can it? Totally. So just having someone else that's on your side there can be really useful. But there's also lots of really great local organisations too that can be a good form of support or advocacy. I've also jumped into just saying the word advocacy, so it's maybe worth explaining that. So it's where someone is there to basically help you share your views and be involved in decisions about your life. So an advocate is never going to tell a parent or a young person this is what to think or this is what to say. It's just about building that relationship with them to understand what it is they're wanting to say and what they want out of a meeting. And then the advocate's job is to basically help them do that and make sure that they're listened to and get a proper say in what's happening. So in terms of finding that, there is lots and lots of different local services, like carer centres are a really good one. Some parents don't think about carer centres as for them, but if you're raising a child with extra needs, with additional support needs, then you have extra unpaid caring responsibilities. So a lot of those centres will be able to help you and offer great support. There's also a bunch other, I wouldn't be able to list them all off the top of my head, but a little plug for our website is on our website we've got resources where you can look for useful organisations and you can kind of search on there for support and advocacy services.
Yeah, it's a really good tool. And you can put in your local area so you can find ones that are nearby to you specifically.
Yeah, totally. So thinking about whether or not you need some help potentially at the meeting and getting in touch with a friend or an advocacy service is obviously one of the ways you can help set yourself up as best you can to get the most from a meeting. Yeah. What are some other ways that we kind of chat through?
I think other things you can do is sometimes it can be quite helpful to let the school know what main things you want to discuss at the meeting. Yeah, totally. So it might be the case that you've called a meeting because you think you need to review the support your child's getting. Maybe their needs have changed a little bit, or it's just time to kind of review things, so you could let them know. Or might be you feel your child's not maybe getting enough support, or they need more or different support, so you could just let the school know, in an email or something like that, these are the main points I kind of want to cover at the meeting. And that can help everyone, I think, be on the same page as to what's happening in the meeting, and also to make the most of the time, because obviously the time can sometimes fly by, so it can be good to kind of have a plan of, these are just a short email or a short letting the school know these are the key things
I think
I want to talk about.
The other thing that can be really useful for is saving a really frustrating situation where you're like all hyped up and ready to talk about the thing that's the big issue for you that you want to chat about, and then you get to school and they're like, oh, well, we don't really know because we didn't realise that was what you were wanting to talk about today. Yeah. So it's kind of giving the school a heads up to say, these are the things I'm going to want to cover, and
Definitely.
It gives them a chance to actually find some answers and think about
what they're going to say
and what they can say.
Yeah, definitely.
So and with asking, another one as well that I sometimes give people as a bit of a tip is just saying who's going to actually be at the meeting, because again, that thing of walking in and being like, why is there 6 people around
and who are they and what do they do?
So that's definitely one of saying who's going to be there and do they need to be there and what's their role at that meeting.
Definitely. I think you can also ask for any documents that are going to be discussed. So sometimes if you're meeting to review a child's support, you'll kind of be looking at some kind of written support plan, or you can just ask the school, are there any documents that you can send me before the meeting that would be helpful? And that can sometimes be good to kind of have.
Definitely. A good one with that sometimes is if your child's experiencing bullying, the school will often, if the school don't have one, certainly the local authority will, but they should have a anti-bullying policy. So having sight of that first can be useful to then walk in a little bit more ready to say, well, your policy says that this is what's meant to happen. So can you explain how that's happening for my child?
Yeah, that's a really good example. I think as well, also when you're preparing to go into a meeting, it's really important. You obviously spoke about children's rights to be involved, and again, it's they should really be at the heart of things. So it can be worth having a little bit of a think about how your child can be involved, and that will vary from child to child and young person to young person, in terms of what they're kind of comfortable with and what they can kind of input. So for some children and young people, they can come along to the meeting, they can be involved in the meeting and listen to what everyone has to say and speak themselves. Some other children might be more comfortable maybe recording a short video of themselves talking about what they've been finding hard at school, what they want to change. Some can write things down, some might draw a picture. And another option is some children or young people might want you as their parent or carer to talk about for them what the things that they're finding difficult and what they want to happen. So I think it can be really good for you as a parent or carer to just spend a little bit of time thinking, what will work best for my child? How can they be involved in this process? How can we kind of get their views in? And I think it's really helpful for everyone, because really focuses the meeting on the child themselves and what support they need and what they have to say about things.
Couldn't agree more. So important. And I think as well for children that maybe their support needs affect their communication and their language and stuff, if it's a good one to remember as well that they can communicate their needs, like you're saying, through drawings or through other means, and also behaviour is a form of communication. So it's okay for parents to say, well, when my child gets home, this is the changes or these are the differences I'm seeing in their behaviour, and like, have a conversation about what that's meaning, like about how their child are feeling, because that is sharing their views. It's maybe not in the way that you might classically think about it, but it absolutely is.
Yeah, definitely. And then I guess when we think about when we're actually in the meeting itself, is there any kind of tips you have on how we can get the most of the time that we have and the meeting itself? Yeah,
absolutely. I think, like we've already chatted about, I suppose a lot of getting the best out of a meeting is in the preparation.
Yeah, definitely.
So knowing what you're walking into, and feeling ready and knowing what you want to chat through. But during that, I would say jotting down the key points that you want to talk about, like, and having them there with you at the meeting, because we can all, like, it's the most emotional and personal thing when you're talking about your child, and especially if things are going a bit wrong or you're really worried about their well-being or what's happening at school. It's really, really easy to get a little bit off track and or focus on one thing and then get to the end of a meeting and go,
I want to speak about
this. To say. So having that it's a basic thing, but it's I think a really helpful bit of a guide or a tool that you can do for yourself. There's also something for me about giving yourself permission to kind of even the balance of power a little bit within a meeting. So it can be really intimidating, like walking into school. You might have had poor experiences of school yourself, or you might be worried that they're judging you about, like, we speak to families a lot where the young person's really having a tough time going to school, so maybe really anxious and not in school a lot, and parents are sometimes really worried, like, oh, maybe the school are judging me or think I'm doing something wrong here. So anything you can do to try and remind yourself that you belong there and you're a really important equal part of that conversation, I think is worthwhile. So if the professionals forget to introduce themselves, it's like, okay, absolutely, to at the start say, sorry, can I double check who everyone is and what you do. If there's you could double check if there's someone there to take minutes, like to take notes, and if they are, then that's great, and if there's not, it might give you a wee incentive to jot down a couple of notes as you go, so you can remember what's kind of been agreed.
And that can be quite good, having someone else with you, a friend or a family member or someone from a local care centre, because they also might want to jot down a few things, and that can keep your focus on on talking. So if you prefer that, that's always like another option.
Definitely. And that's something you could maybe ask in advance as well, I suppose, because if there's going to be someone there to take minutes, you might not need that. But if there's not, then it's maybe more of a reason to have someone there with you. There's also, I've heard some parents say they found it really, really useful to ask specifically to speak first, because I think, like, sometimes if you're sitting there going, oh, I know I really want to say this thing, it can be hard to fully engage. It
can be quite distracting, can't it? Just waiting to get your thoughts out.
Those that are more nervous maybe to speak and stuff. And on that as well, it's okay to kind of be brave, I suppose, and to say, I find this difficult, or this is upsetting for me, or like, basically, please bear with me. And like, if you need to take a short break, or if speaking first or at the end it might be easier, or if you want to read like a short couple of paragraphs that you've written, or like, basically the professionals have a responsibility to seek and listen to seek your views and listen to you and take account of what you're saying and what you're worried about and what you think might help. So they should support you to help you do that. And, I'm trying to think as well for you've already touched on it, I think, but worth re-mentioning it during the meeting is, if your child's there as well, is making sure that that's a main focus, kind of what their views are and what they want to happen. And I think the final thing that is worth mentioning of trying to get the best during meetings is seeing where possible. I know this is a lot easier for me to say than necessarily do, but where possible, it's really helpful to try and get a bit of a shared understanding of what the concerns or the issues are. So kind of, what is it that my child's having a tough time with, or what do they need some help with? And kind of, if you can agree that first, like with the school where everyone agrees, it's a bit easier to then say, okay, what can we now do about it? Whereas sometimes parents might think they've already, like, I think my kid needs this specific support, they need more one-to-one hours with their classroom assistant or they need this. And if they go in the conversation with that as the like first thing that they're talking about, it can sometimes become a
back
bit
and
of a
forth.
battle. Exactly, where it's like, well, we can't do that, well, that's what my child needs, and it's like, well, where do we go? So taking a bit of a step back to say, what does my child need help with in the first place, what's working and what isn't for them at the moment, and it kind of sets you up a little bit more to hopefully have that kind of problem solving conversation between you. Is there anything else? I think I've thought of one more thing. I said that was the last thing, but I've lied. So.
Go ahead though.
The other thing for me is around including positives as well. I've literally just been guilty of it now. So it's a good example of how it's easy to do. But naturally, a lot of the time when you're having a meeting with the school, it's because there's something that's maybe needing reviewed because something's not quite right, or you're a bit worried about whether your child's meeting their full potential or something like that. So it's quite easy to jump straight to this is going wrong, what are we going to do about it? Or, oh, my child's not managing this, or that's not working at all for them. And sometimes there's a lot of merit to stop and say what is working well, because then you can learn from that to say, okay, well, can we do more of that? Or how could we think about that in other contexts? And I think it's also really important as well for children, young people and parents to remember the positives too, and to not only be like, we're just talking about all these things and all these problems, all these things. There's a young person at the heart of that that's like interested, that has their own interests, that's got their own passions, that has friends, that's got all these other amazing things going on in their lives. And it's like spending a little bit of time to celebrate those and recognize those is like also really good. And it can, I think, help that dynamic between home and school as well, where if you can start the meeting saying, oh, I know, like, you already do these things for my child and that's working really well and we're really grateful and that's like great, and we like can see that you're really trying your best with that. It maybe adds a little bit more goodwill to then figuring out, okay, well, let's look at the bits that aren't working quite as well.
And sometimes solutions can come from the things, like the positives about school. I remember I was speaking with a parent, and a young person was really struggling to get into school, struggling with attendance. And at the beginning of the meeting, they really talked a lot about the things they really, really do enjoy, especially physical activity and sports and PE. And that actually was kind of a solution in having some extra PE. It helped them to come back into school and to, putting that focus on the subjects they enjoyed. So sometimes as well, those positives and their interests and the things that they really do like and they do get on well with, that can sometimes sometimes there can be a solution in there for something that's maybe more difficult for them.
Totally. So during the meeting then, what would you hope to kind of get by the end of a meeting? Like, where would you be like recommending or like trying to have as a bit of a target to get from a meeting?
Well, I think hopefully, like, by the end of the meeting, everyone's had a chance to talk a bit about the child and the young person, the things that are maybe going well for them and the things that they maybe find more difficult, the support they're getting, or if there's a problem. So there should be time for everyone to like share their views, talk a little bit about what's been going on, or share what they have to share. Time to listen to the child's views in whatever way that kind of works best. And then I think, like, towards the end, you kind of want to have some agreed next steps of what's going to happen next. So it's really good, to have an idea of, okay, we're going to try this and see how it goes, or this is going to happen next. And sometimes it can be really helpful to have a specific person that's going to do those things as well. Again, just to get something concrete. Okay, this is the plan kind of going forward. And again, it doesn't need to be like, oh, well, this is it. This is the solution. We've figured everything out and we're good from there. It can just be, oh, why don't we try this? And we're going to try this for this long and see if things improve, and then we'll take things from there. So it can be really good to have some agreed next steps. Again, sometimes these might be written down in minutes or in notes, or even if there isn't any minutes or notes, you can take a note of that yourself. And sometimes there might be like a document that needs to be updated. So again, some children will have some kind of written support plan that kind of outlines what the school is doing to help them. So that might need changed at the kind of by the end of a meeting. And I guess another thing that's really important to talk about is when and how you're going to keep each other up to date. Because again, with a lot of different things at school, children and young people change, their needs change, and things change at school. So I think it's really good to have a bit of a plan of how and when are we going to generally keep ourselves up to date with how things are going on? What's the best way to communicate with the schools? Do they prefer email? Do they prefer phone calls? Will it just be a quick check-in at the school gate? Like some children have a little communication diary where the teacher writes a few words and the parent writes a few words. How will we keep each other up to date? And quite often it can be helpful to talk about when will we next meet to review those things that we've put in place. When will we meet to see how did that work? How are they getting on? Are things getting better? Does anything need change? So it can be quite good to kind of have an idea of when you're next going to meet to kind of take things from there.
Definitely, it focuses the mind a bit. And I think especially if things have become a bit tricky and relationships have broken down, maybe a bit like you've kind of lost a bit of trust in the school, maybe then having it set out where we've agreed some like clear action points, we know who's doing it, we know when it's happening by, and this is when we're next checking in to see how that's going. It kind of adds that accountability, but also like reassurance, I suppose, that it's not just we're gonna try this new thing and then in a year's time we're gonna go, oh well, actually that wasn't the right thing. Like, there's plenty of chances before then to check in. So.
And it keeps everyone on the same page as well. You know, everyone's kind of agreed to these things and everyone knows what's going to happen next. Rather than you thinking, oh, like maybe we should try this, maybe we should try that. So it's really good for everyone, agree those steps together and give it a try. And
I think you said it already around how don't worry if you've not been able to fully finish every single point and every single thing is like certain by the end of a meeting. I think having a few key things that have like changed or progressed that you've managed to agree on is really positive. But if there's still some bits that you need to reconsider or come back to, that can be part of the end of the chat as well. It's like, well, are we going to have another meeting to do that? Should we like pick that bit up in a phone call later on? Like, but do that, because sometimes it might be as well that you can get so far by saying, okay, we've now agreed that my child's really struggling with this part of their learning. We've already tried these 3 things to help them with that. We're a little bit out of ideas. So like we're going to now speak to educational psychology or involve speech and language and ask for their input and some advice. So like in that scenario, there's not a clear answer yet of what they're going to try, but it's like, well, what can we do in the meantime and who's contacting them and when's that going to happen? Update me. And exactly.
No, that can be really helpful. And then I guess kind of after a meeting, is there any kind of tips you can think of or any things that we would recommend that like parents kind of do following a meeting?
Yeah, I think so. So I suppose it's a little bit different depending if there were minutes taken or not. So if there's a minute taker, I think asking when that's going to be shared, and then once you've seen them, if there's points that you think have been missed that were really important, or if they've recorded something that doesn't feel like it was quite in line with what you thought had been agreed, it's really important to go back to the school and kind of highlight that and share that with them so that they can be updated. Or even if the school say, well, we saw that in a different way, then it can still be updated to reflect that you've understood it to be different, so that you can record differences of opinion as well as agreements. But I'd say that's really important. If there is a written plan, again, like asking when that it's going to be updated and shared with you, and the same thing, like checking through it yourself and seeing if it's like got everything that you think it should have, and if not, following up. If there's not been any kind of proper formal plan, or if there's not been a minute taker, I know it's already like a part-time job, like trying to go to these meetings and support your child and juggle being a parent and working and all these different things, but where you've got some time, I think it can be really helpful to send a brief follow-up email after like these meetings, just to say, thanks so much for the time, really appreciate it, this is what I've understood, we've agreed, or these are what we're doing next.
And it doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be like, you know, screeds and screeds of every single thing that was said, like even bullet points of like the main kind of things that have been covered and the main things that have been agreed can be really helpful.
100%. And that can actually end up acting, for all intents and purposes, like a written support plan. Because it's a written record of what you've chatted about, what they're going to try next, when you're next going to meet and review it. It's that written record that we were talking about earlier that can add some accountability. And also, hopefully things can obviously be agreed and like work together well with the school moving forward. But if you got to a stage where you felt like you tried everything with this school and needed to maybe escalate stuff, it also means there is that written record to be able to show like what you've already tried.
This is what we've done.
Definitely. Which I suppose that's maybe the last thing to cover is if you've come out of a meeting and feel like, oh, I'm still really worried, or what we've chatted about I don't think is going to address my concerns, or that there are other options that you can take. So one would be, I suppose it depends who you've met with.
Yeah.
Like, so you can always escalate it up within the school. Like if you've met with your child's class teacher or their guidance or pastoral care teacher, it might be that you send them an email afterwards saying, thank you very much, but I'm still quite concerned about these things. Would it be possible to please meet with the head of support for learning at the school or the deputy or head teacher, and kind of, again, setting out what it is that you're still worried about, and see if hopefully having another conversation with someone a bit higher up might be able to might be able to reassure you or bring about some change. If you think you've already escalated it fully within the school and kind of are at a stage where you're a little bit stuck of what to do next, then all of the additional support for learning laws, all the rights and responsibilities are kind of about ultimately at the local authority level. So it's saying the education department of your local authority, so that's your local council, they are responsible for making sure their pupils have the support that they need and that it's kept under review and things. So where possible, we encourage everyone to try and work together with the school. It's often the quickest and easiest and best way to bring about like changes, and they're the ones that are day-to-day meeting your child. But if you do reach that stage where you're struggling, you can get in touch with the local authority. Each local authority has an additional support for learning contact or team that you can get in touch with directly. Our website, they're different, and they obviously sometimes people move on or change in different roles. So we ask everyone all the local authorities to update us regularly, and we keep our website updated with it. So if you don't know who the person is in your area, you can go to our website, enquire.org.uk, and then under the resources section, you can find your local authority contact.
Yeah, that's really useful. Because I know sometimes it can be difficult searching through different websites and stuff. So yeah, we do have it on our website, so you can just go straight there.
Totally. And then there are a bunch of options beyond that stage as well. We've got pages explaining the more formal routes, but there's also things like mediation, which is a great option sometimes, especially where relationships have become really strained maybe, or you just feel like you've sort of logged heads and are a bit stuck. A mediator is different to an advocate. So an advocate is someone that's there, that's on your side and that's there to help you put forward what you want to put forward. A mediator is a neutral person, so they are there to facilitate a meeting between a parent and the school or parent and the local authority. Mediation is a free option. It's not something you should ever have to pay for. It's optional, so it's not kind of that you're forced to go through it, but it's often worth giving a try because it's trying to make sure that you've got a fair chance to put across your views, be involved in finding a bit of a compromise and a way forward that you think will work for your child. And the nature of it is all about communication and trying to rebuild some of that trust and communication that might have been lost in the arguing beforehand. So it can be a good reset sometimes to then start to work together again. And
again, we have information about who the mediation provider in your area is on our website, under the useful organisations kind of bit. So you can have a look there.
Totally. Is there anything else that
I think that's probably everything. Thanks a lot, Mark, for joining us, and thanks everyone listening along. I hope you found it helpful. And I guess like just to end, everyone involved in your child's life and their education and their support should all, they should all be there to try and help your child get the most out of their learning and to support them in the way that's right for them. And meetings are just one way that kind of professionals can come together with parents and carers and sometimes children themselves to kind of figure out what they might need and how to resolve problems. So hopefully that's helped to like demystify a little bit what can be sometimes an intimidating kind of thing, but hopefully as well you feel maybe a bit confident going into meetings after listening to this, that kind of what's going to happen and some tips to kind of get the most out of them. So thanks a lot for joining us.